Welcome to the Sacred Rebellion, the space where truth isn't filtered, sovereignty is sacred, and rebellion is a return to self. This isn't just a podcast, it's a remembering. We're here to break the trance of comfortability, reclaim our gifts, and rise as the embodied rebels we were born to be. Here we journey with the wild hearts, the way showers, and the visionaries who choose their truth over comfort, their mission over fear, and their soul over the system. This is where the coded ones come to speak, the ones who didn't fit in because they were never meant to, and the ones who turn their pain into power and their story into medicine. So drop in, take a breath, and let's remember who we really are, one sacred rebellion at a time. Welcome back to the Sacred Rebellion, the space where sovereignty leads, systems are questioned, and the cosmic truth always finds its way home. In this electrifying episode, The Sacred Rebellion, we welcome Debbie Solaris, Galactic historian, Arcturian, contactee, and multidimensional truth bringer, whose life shattered the limits of conventional reality after one unforgettable encounter aboard an Arcturian mothership. A former military veteran and an environment scientist, Debbie once dismissed the idea of aliens in galactic contact until she was taken. What followed was a radical activation, visions, downloads, and memories of ancient civilizations, interstellar councils, and planetary timelines erased from human memory. Since then, Debbie has become a powerful voice for the galactic truth, helping thousands remember who they are, where they come from, and why they are here. Welcome to the show, Debbie.
Thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to this show. So yeah, thanks for having me on. This is awesome.
Yeah, I'm really excited for you. I've actually even told my husband, I was like, I get to interview Debbie today. And you've always been someone I've looked forward to because I've always, since my awakening, I've always believed in aliens. My grandmother, she's religious, but she's always like, don't tell anyone, but I believe in aliens. So I've
Your
always thought
grandmother
they were
was a
interesting.
wise woman.
Yeah, she was definitely
Yeah.
very unconventional.
Yeah.
So let's jump into it. You were once deeply skeptical of the paranormal. What happened during your 2012 experience that changed everything?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great way to start off. Get the background story in there. So like you mentioned in your, forward that I was a skeptic. I didn't believe in any of this stuff. I mean, I was raised in a military family. We traveled a lot throughout my childhood. So, my parents were very deeply Catholic. And we didn't talk about the paranormal or aliens or the occult, during our dinner table conversations, so to speak. It just wasn't a topic that ever came up. And so I just wasn't raised around that. I think I always kind of had a mild interest in spirituality, just like any person would. I wouldn't say that I was a spiritual seeker, for I would say a good half portion of my life. I was just a human that was trying to survive, this three-dimensional reality, this matrix reality, that where we have to work, you have to go to school, you have to get a degree, you have to work, you have to make a living, doing all that stuff. And you're right, I was in the military. I was in the US Navy for 6 years. I worked as a hospital corpsman slash preventive medicine tech. I had a decent career. I mean, I didn't stay in long term because I wanted to have a family at that time and I wanted to get married. And I just thought it would be difficult to do that, in the military. So I got out and then I started working as an environmental health specialist. So I've done that for a number of years. So I have a very science background. So obviously, I wasn't drawn to metaphysics initially, but what happened in 2012, so we're going to speed up the story here, is that um, I was starting to notice that, things were shifting in our reality, just that, okay, people are talking about the Mayan calendar ending. Does that have to do with the onset of the Aquarian age? We were going through elections in the United States and, there was a lot of, I would say, societal changes I think that were going on. And I do think 2012 was a pivotal year for awakening, just like 2020 was, or 1986, or, all those years where there was just a large amount of people awakening. So what happened to me in a nutshell was I went through an alien abduction, if you want to call it that. I don't consider it an abduction. I didn't feel like I was taken against my will, and maybe it was predestined that this was supposed to happen when it did. And so what happened was I sent out this prayer to the universe one night when I couldn't sleep, asking for divine assistance for planet Earth. I felt like there was way too much suffering. We're in the 21st century and, we're still suffering on this planet. There's an entire, and the environment was being impacted, entire animal species being wiped out, and I was concerned about that. And it was a very genuine, heartfelt prayer. And then I just forgot about the prayer. It's just kind of like, one of those sleepless night things. You're just like, okay, I can't sleep. I'm going to ask the angels for some help. And then I forgot about it the next day. And then 2 weeks after that happened, this was like May, I would say May, kind of late May, early June. I went to sleep as normal, and I came to in a different reality. Like I started, and it wasn't a dream. I always say that because I think a lot of people think, okay, maybe you were just having a really lucid dream, but it was not a dream. It was too real. When you're in the higher dimensions, whether you're, I would say, a near death experiencer, you're an extraterrestrial contactee, or you're having an out of body experience, things are crystal clear. It's like the reality is so much more real than what we currently experience in 3D reality. I knew already that this wasn't a dream. It was, some sort of other dimension. And, I looked around, I saw that I was in a starship, and it looked unlike any starship I've seen on sci-fi movies, very organic, very light filled, but you could tell it was some sort of a craft. And then craft led me to this room where I encountered extraterrestrial beings that told me they were from the Arcturus star system. And this was my first time ever hearing about Arcturus, as a species, or as other than, oh, it's a star system, and I guess I was too busy just trying to process to be scared. I was just, because a lot of people ask me, oh, were you scared? Were you frightened? These were alien beings. And I said, no. First of all, I was just trying to process everything that was going on. And when you encounter Arcturians, they emit this beautiful love energy. They're just really beautiful, loving beings. They feel like family. They feel like your best friends or your family. So you're not going to be afraid of these beings. No, you can't be afraid around that really high vibration they're emitting out. And so these beings were telepathically communicating with me, and they told me that they heard my prayer, which kind of shocked me, actually. I didn't think anybody heard my prayer. So that tells you how tuned in they are to the conscious field. And then the other thing, they started telling me that, because I asked them why me, because I'm nobody special, I'm just a ordinary human from Earth. And they said, no, you're not human. You're in a human form, but you're not one of us. You're from we're your soul family. And they said, you're on a mission. You just forgot about the mission because there's so much heavy density on planet Earth. And they kind of explained a lot of things. They explained, why things are the way they are in the 3D matrix. They said a lot of it's an illusion. And they also even showed me images of what Earth could become if we ascend, so if we ascend to the fifth dimension. And that was really emotionally moving for me to see that, to see how beautiful the Earth could become. Because I was very concerned about the environment and about people living good lives. And they didn't tell me anything like about my mission at that time. I think they wanted me kind of to discover it on my own. Like I had to go through this whole process. But so even though they said I was on a mission, they didn't necessarily say, oh, this is your mission. I mean,
That'd be
they
too easy.
didn't.
That'd be too easy.
That would, you kind of have to go through the whole process,
Yeah.
But what they did tell me, which was very gratifying for me, was that they have been watching over me and watching over my Earth family and watching over my spiritual family for many, many years. And I don't know what they meant by that initially, but I think I understand it more now. And I think at first I thought they were talking about, my immediate family, but I think they were actually referring to the Starseed family, that they were watching over all of us. And they said, You don't need to worry. We have things under control, even though things seem chaotic on planet Earth. And they did use that term, it's an illusion, it's not real. And so sometimes, when you watch mainstream news and you see all this crazy stuff they're talking about and people are freaking out, it is like, I always tell myself, well, it's not real. It's just made up stuff, Yeah, yeah, and I know you know that, because you've been down those rabbit holes
Oh
too.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Whenever the news is turned on, I'm like, oh, you watching Netflix? What are you watching? You don't need to really watch. It's not real. It's
Yeah,
not.
it's not real at all. Yeah, it's even this, this newest thing with this big, falling out with, Donald Trump and Elon Musk. I think that's all just a show. I don't
Oh
know.
yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's
It's
just
a bunch of babies throwing a fit.
yeah, exactly.
I actually just
So
thought it was funny. I'm like, friend breakup. Totally in the astrology right now. Anyways, like the collective's going through massive rebirth in their relationships. Anyways, so I'm like, not surprised that Donald Trump and Elon Musk are going through their breakup, right?
yeah, for sure. I don't know. They're both really big personalities, so I kind of had a sense that they were going to clash at some point.
Uh-huh.
So that does. But getting back to my story, I guess
Yeah.
I did interact with other beings. So this ship was huge. It was an amazing ship. I mean, it was just had
Wow.
technology I can't even describe because it was just so beyond what we have here on Earth currently. And I interacted with Pleiadian beings also on this visit. And then I woke up and I was back in my bed and I knew at that point something extraordinary happened. I knew immediately that this was not no ordinary dream or just some sort of imagination. And so, of course, the first person I told was my husband, who didn't believe me at first. He thought,
No.
yeah, he thought I was having a weird dream, and now he believes me. But and then from there, I had a second visit in December of the same year, same ship, same beings, a little bit more of a personal visit. They talked about, some of the people in my inner circle, and my connection with them and, what role they were playing. And then it was a very short visit, but again, same ship, same beings. And then after that, like I said, I knew that something extraordinary happened, and I knew I was never going to be the same person. That I couldn't go back to being asleep. I couldn't go back to being, I would say blissfully ignorant.
Yeah.
And so that creates a lot of, I would say, trauma sometimes, like where your whole paradigm, all your belief systems are shattered at that point, and then you're having to try to fit back into a reality that no longer makes any sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Pandora's box is open. Can you go back in?
Yeah,
No.
you can't close the box anymore.
No.
No, I love that analogy, by the way, but yeah, it's just kind of like I went through a period of depression, like for
Yeah.
months,
Yeah.
and I think that's very common with ET contactees and with NDE experiencers. Like you're back in the 3D and things are boring and normal and, not in a good way. You're having to go back to work, you're having to go back to the old life, but you don't feel like you're a part of that anymore. And so you're having to deal with it. So I
Yeah.
would say that was the pivotal moment that really sparked my awakening, that really, I would say put me on a new trajectory, on a new path, so I appreciate that question. Thank you.
Yeah, what an incredible story. Like that is an incredible experience and I love that it's not a negative one. I
Yeah,
love
me too. Me too.
love that it's not negative because I know some people have quite a few negative experiences when they are taken into ships and I love that you're able to share a story that is positive and that it's not scary and that essentially your higher dimensional self is Arcturian. That's your soul family. That's your oversoul energy. And so I'm getting like full body goosebumps right now. It's like that energy of home that
Yeah.
so many of us starseeds, I'm getting emotional, are looking for.
Totally, totally, and I'm starting to get teary-eyed too, actually.
I'm like, I'm getting emotional.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know, it's just like, oh my gosh, I mean, I don't know if it's the, planetary alignments or,
I'm
but
like, I'm gonna start crying. I'm a crier though, so no
oh,
surprise when
okay,
I'm gonna
I usually
get
am not,
emotional.
but yeah, I hear you, but no, it's
Yeah.
just, I totally feel that, and I just remember feeling like, gosh, I feel at home with those beings, and I don't know why. I couldn't figure out why at the time, because I was totally not afraid of them, and it's because they're part of my soul group. They were my alternate selves, or part of the Arcturian collective that I'm also connected with. So yeah, I don't know. I totally feel like that's what a lot of us are seeking right now, that sense of origin, or what am I connected with? Who am I a part of? Who's my family? And that's why I do the work that I do. I think I was a little bit ahead of my time. I mean, I
Yeah. Oh,
remember
definitely.
yeah, I mean, I
Definitely.
remember, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
2012. Yeah, I remember thinking, gosh, I can't talk to anybody about this because people are gonna think I freaking lost it. I lost it. Okay, I need to be locked up. I
Yeah.
was so terrified of that. Yeah, I didn't even tell my family. I told Terry, my husband. I didn't tell my family. I maybe told two friends that were very awakened, and my spiritual teacher, because I started taking spiritual classes. So I told her about my experience. And she was Native American, so she totally understood.
Yeah, she was like, "Oh, yeah, that
Oh
checks."
yeah, that shit happens all the time. I was like, really? And she said, yeah. She's like, oh,
Yeah.
like, yeah. The natives, Native Americans, they totally get it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So that was gratifying for me, but I went through a whole discovery journey of my own. So it wasn't like they just gave me all the answers. It was kind of like they gave me a little bit to get me started, but and I think this is why, I work with a lot of star seeds, and a lot of them get really impatient. They're like, well, I want to know my mission. I want to know what I'm supposed to be doing. And I said, well, you're supposed to discover that. It's not just handed to you. It's because your guides, if they're true guides, are never going to tell you, like, oh, you're supposed to be doing this.
Yep.
Because, they're not going to infringe upon your free will. So it's up to you to, go out there and explore, all the possibilities, and then see what you end up resonating with, or, what opens up for you. Yeah, I just had a client yesterday, she was so cute. I was just an adorable client. She was just like, oh, I want to know, I'm just a stay-at-home mom. I want to know what it is I'm supposed to be doing. I told her, well, just ask your guides, just, communicate with your guides. Maybe they can give you, my guides used to send me on crazy adventures,
I
so
can write it. I can relate with that one.
yeah, they would
Yeah.
used to send me on these crazy, little tasks or adventures that didn't make any sense to me at the time. And I was, like, okay, my guides are telling me to do this,
Mhm.
all right,
Mhm.
but, and then, in aftermath, I look at it and it's like, oh, okay, now I understand. And so I was telling her, maybe that's what you need to do too. Just, yeah, it seems like you have a good connection with your guides. Just ask them. Yeah, I think it took like a couple of years before I even got into doing Akashic work. So I know a lot of people know me from my Akashic, reading work, and I think it was because I was supposed to be open to all other possibilities.
Yeah.
So I took a lot of different trainings, and I think it actually made me a better, well-rounded spiritual practitioner. So I know about crystals, I know about Native American medicine work. I know about harmonic astronomy, so these are all and galactic astrology, so these are all things that I can incorporate into my Akashic work, so I feel fortunate, that my path unfolded the way it did, and I wasn't just handed like, oh, you're supposed to be doing this.
Yeah. 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 I had a child in 2012, and that actually sparked an awakening. Yeah, I've been kind of in the game too for a little bit, and being highly gifted myself pretty much my whole life, not
Mhm.
really understanding it, right? And also being raised in religion, thinking like there's something wrong with me my whole life. It's always interesting to kind of look back on how each piece of that puzzle has made sense
Mhm.
and healing in that aspects and, having highs and lows and highs and lows. And also being a starseed, that was one of my biggest things was like, I just want to know where I'm from. I just want to know like, what star nation do I belong to? What star nation? And you know what's funny, Debbie? I have never had someone be able to tell me until recently. I was told I was part of the Ascended Masters. That was the first time I'd ever been like, they're like, yeah, I just see like white beings. I don't know who you're part of. And I'm like, but I worked with Arcturians. That when I first started like light language, I worked a lot with Arcturians and Blu-rays.
Mhm.
And so, but when I would like, I had a couple of readings, they're like, oh yeah, I have no idea where you're from. I'm like, gosh dang it. It's always been interesting, but I work with an array of beings. But yeah, since I think it was like two
You're
months ago.
probably what I classify as a galactic angelic, so you're kind of beyond Starseed, honestly. So you're probably more aligned with the Elohim or the galactic realm rather than just one specific, star nation. Although you probably worked with a lot of different star
Oh
people.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
so that's
Yeah.
what I'm picking up just from, us, just tuning into your field, but
Yeah, yeah, that was always my interest. I was like, what do I belong to? And then they'd be, I had full memory cognitive of like, when we can talk about some galactic history, but I think it was in January, I turned my head in the shower and I had full memory of Mintaka. And I was like, where the hell am I? I'm somewhere that I didn't, what is this? This is a water planet. And like going through all the things. But yeah, as I've talked to a couple people, they're like, oh yeah, your green eyes are definitely have had Mintaka in life. Like your eyes are very distinct. And so I always find that, and they change. Like today they look a little more blue green
yeah.
and sometimes they're like super green. But yeah, then it's always interesting to hear. So let's dive into some galactic history. What are some of the most important galactic events humanity has forgotten and why are they hidden?
I've always kind of wondered that myself. Like, why is it that the powers to be on this planet don't want us to know our true history? And the reason for that is because they don't want us to become empowered. If we knew where we really came from, who our ancestors were, what star families we're a part of, we wouldn't put up with the bullshit that we put up with here on planet Earth. We'd be like, we're taking our power back. And I think that's why, so many of us that are, light workers, we get attacked and we get squashed and,
Oh yeah.
yeah, we get so many obstacles in our path, a lot of times because the powers to be, the dark cabal or whatever you want to call, the Illuminati or whatever you want to
The
call them.
government.
Yeah, government. They don't want us to know, how truly magnificent we are. They want to keep us small, So they feed us all this bullshit, history, like, oh yeah, you guys came from apes. It's like, okay, that doesn't make
Darwin.
sense to
Darwin.
me. Yeah, Darwin theory. Yeah, like, okay, you evolved from this fish that one fish that walked off out of the ocean. like
Yeah.
Like, okay, yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
No.
And then even the Adam and Eve story never made sense to me.
No. No.
I actually think it's more of an allegorical story that was taken from the Sumerian writings, but I don't think it was meant to be literal. I think it was more meant to be allegorical in the sense that Adam probably represents an aspect of Lyra, Eve represented Vega, and the snake represented Draco, so it was like a bigger story than what they made it out to be. But I have a hard time believing that all humans came from two people. It just doesn't make
Same.
sense. Yeah.
Same.
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Means we're all a bunch of inbreds.
yeah. So going yeah, we would be in bad.
Yeah, that way, that's kind of what I was like, oh my God, we're all inbreded. Like, that's not even possible in today's, why would that been possible then,
Yeah.
Quote,
And
quote,
then
wink, wink, right?
there was, gaps in the story. Like they were talking about, Cain found a wife and supposedly he and Abel were the only two children at the time of Adam and Eve. So where did the
Yep.
wife come from?
Just
Okay.
magically appeared.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, God made her out of a leaf. Yeah, so okay.
Out of a leap. Yeah, right?
Yeah, I know. It's just like, some of these stories were ridiculous. So when I started getting the downloads about galactic history, way back, after, my ET contact experiences, like I said, I thought I was making it up, like how do I know this? Like all of a sudden I knew all these star systems. And I've never taken astronomy. I was more of a biology major in, college. So, I never took physics or astronomy at all, so I was just like, where's this stuff coming from? So then when I started researching it, I was like, gosh, this makes sense. This makes more sense than the history that we were taught in school. Like somehow it made things just aligned. And one of the biggest stories that I always refer to, and a lot of us are connected to, is the fall of Lyra. It was the Lyran civilization. What was the purpose of it, and why was it actually located right next door to Draco. Like there's a reason behind it, because I don't think the co-creator beings did that by accident. I think it was very purposeful, actually. But Lyra existed for thousands of years as this flourishing civilization. They lived in complete unity consciousness. These are beings that lived on paradise planets, so they never experienced any adversity. They never experienced war. They coexisted with one another. And I think a lot of us collectively remember our lifetimes, in Lyra. Like, I remember living on a planet that was so beautiful, it was, beyond description. And I remember living amongst, all kinds of beings that were beautiful beings, big cat beings, beautiful bird beings, just elementals that, you know, were just amazing. And then everything got taken away, everything got destroyed. And I still think that's a kind of a collective thing within all of us. It's a collective trauma that all of us keep replaying over and over and over again. This feeling of, I don't want to get too attached to something good because it could be taken away in an instance. And that's part of the healing journey that I think a lot of us collectively are on. I see it over and over again with my Akashic clients. And we play this out in different, I would say, in different ways, in our current lifetimes. So maybe we're in a relationship and we think that we found the one, and then our spouse cheats on us, and then we have to, and then they leave us for another person, and then so everything that we thought was good was taken away. Or we have this great job, matrix job, and making good money, have a good career, and then all of a sudden you get laid off, or you lose your spouse or your kids, or your parents. So I do believe that these are themes that came from that original Lyran trauma, and that's why I talk about Lyra so much. It's the home, considered to be the home of human consciousness. So
Oh,
it
interesting.
was where the human races began in our particular universe. So in this universe, in this particular galaxy, it's where the human races began. Now, the human form is a form that's used in multiple universes. So the human form, what they call the Adamic Karman form, is a kind of a form that actually has been repeated over and over again because it's a form that works. It makes sense. And so the co-creator beings that actually came here from other universes to start this descent into physicality, they used this form, because they've used it multiple times before and it was successful. Why reinvent what's not broken?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I do think there's variations. I mean, are there non-humanoid beings out there? Absolutely. There's a lot of them out there, There's tens of thousands of races, even within our own little galaxy, So, and we don't hear about a lot of these, or we don't have interactions with them because they're not directly involved with the Earth human story, So the races that we often talk about, the Pleiadians, the Syrians, Arcturians, those were the ones that were more directly involved with Earth. So that's why we hear about these races all the time. And some of them even have genetic DNA on planet Earth, So, of course they're going to have more of a connection, so this is the reason why, it's because I get a lot of people ask me, like, how come you don't ever talk about, some far off planet in some other galaxy? And I said, because they don't have a direct connection with us. They're not going to get involved with us. They're doing their own thing.
Right.
You know, s- so that's why we see the same beings represented over and over and over again. In our galactic story. Because right now we're all connected with planet Earth. So this is part of our lineage. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's how
Yeah.
I see it, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's always interesting like when I started to I've done a lot of regressions
Hmm.
and how the same story just like with Atlantis, right? That's a hype I know that's not galactic, but Atlantis, it's the same story with people who don't even believe in
Yeah, it
Atlantis, right?
is.
It's the same
Yeah.
story. Or it'd be like someone who I had one time, she was a very religious person. She was trying to clear out some trauma
Hmm.
and she had serious abandonment wounds. Well, it ends up finding out she was part of Maladek, I think is the planet, Maladek.
Maldic, yeah.
And she was explaining it, and I was like, "Where is she?" Because I didn't know, like I had no idea. And I was like, "What's the place? What's the place called?" And she's like, "Mal," and she said it, and she said it like in a different like way that like obviously us, I'm American, so I'm like Maladek, and she
Hmm.
said it very very different, and I was like. I'm gonna have to see if this place exists. So I'm like Googling Maladek, right? Like sounding it out, doing all the things. And yeah, she described it to a T. And it was a memory that she had, essentially hid in tunnels and ended up dying on the planet. And she said, and she's like, all I heard was this big boom and like all, disintegrated and that's where the astral belt comes from now. And so
Yeah,
that was
exactly.
so fascinating. So I've learned a lot of my galactic history and like history, like true history is through regressions, like listening to other, like giving regressions, kind of like the Dolores Cannon, where learning those things, and the same story is just repeated over and over again. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
pretty
you can't
much.
make this up. You can't make it up.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, you can't.
You've
Yeah,
done, I've done probably hundreds of past life regressions. This is not, the consistency is there. You can't make
yeah,
it up. And then listening to like Sarah Cosme's book, I'm like, oh, well, this is what the story I've been told. This is the same. It's all lining up. So it's like truth doesn't change, where
yeah,
history
exactly. Yeah,
throughout time has changed depending on
right,
perception.
right.
Yeah.
And it seems like it's kind of like a human tendency, and I don't know if this is part of our karma or we've signed up for this, but we seem to repeat these same stories like over and over and over again. And maybe this is part of, just the evolutionary process that, that we've chosen to undertake. And I don't know about you. I think you would be in agreement, but I do think we choose our experiences. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
I get a lot of people that say, why would I choose that? That's so horrible. Why would I choose to be with this person or have this experience? I said, because you're trying to have a different experience
Mhm.
or you're trying to do a do-over,
Yeah.
so maybe you're trying to, put yourself in the same scenario that you didn't handle well in the previous life and do it differently in this life, so you chose it, you and your higher self chose to have this experience, as painful as it could be. And I don't know about you, but I know when I was a kid, growing up, it was extremely painful. I had a lot of trauma as a child, and I'm sure you did too, being, in the Mormon, community.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
like
Being told your whole life that like what you see and perceive is, demonic. I mean, that does something on somebody. Gaslighting at its
totally.
finest.
Yeah, totally. So I know, I was traumatized for years and, I used to think there was something wrong with me. And then to have, this realization that, you're this soul from another planet or another star system or another reality, it kind of brings everything to full circle at this point. Kind of like, okay, I'm not the crazy one. I just live in a crazy reality right
Yeah,
now.
I live in hell. That's why I
Yeah,
tell
I do
people,
live
I'm
in
like,
hell.
this is
Yeah.
as bad as it gets. This is not, this is as bad as it gets because we live in 3D, which is literally, religion
That,
teaches
that's
hell and heaven.
bottom. That's bottom level,
Yeah,
girl.
it's bottom level. So, I
Yeah,
mean, the only
bottom
lower
level.
you're gonna get is you're not gonna have any cognitive, you're gonna be like a dog or, a bear, like that 2D, fight, flight, very
Yeah,
primal
yeah, totally.
energy. And so when people are like, I just can't handle it anymore, I'm like, you're at rock bottom. And I think it does something to the human mind when you say, this is like, I mean, when I gave birth and I knew that I was a 10 and it was the worst it was going to get, there's something that clicks in the mind's like, okay, I can handle this. It's like
Mhm,
almost like the ability to be like, this is as bad as it gets,
mhm.
moving yourself out of that like victim mentality, which I think is like if a lot of people could clear that out energetically, the victim mentality, holy shit, what would our humanity be if they could just clear out victimization?
Totally. And there's a lot of victim mentality out there, even amongst people that, you would consider to be otherwise successful, people that other people look up to, like celebrities or, sports figures. A lot of them still like to put the blame outside of themselves, or they don't want to take responsibility, for, their own lives. And it would be nice if people had more self-awareness, to figure that out. I mean, it would be a really different reality we'd be living in. Just that alone. That is not counting all the other funky soul programs out there,
Yeah, it's a big one,
Just
I
that
think, in
one
the
alone.
compass.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's a really, really big, belief system in the subconscious is
Yeah.
victimization, and what a difference we would all experience if we cleared that one, if everyone just cleared out that one belief out, that
Yeah.
one belief.
Well, I think it would make a world of difference. I think it would, it's just like, what I mentioned before about people knowing that, our true history and where we really came from, and that we're not originally from planet Earth, that this DNA was seeded here. And, it was a multitude of different DNAs from different systems. I think it would empower people, like they would be like, okay, I'm not just this stupid little human that's, living this, I don't know, automatron kind of life, going to work, taking care of the family, paying bills, paying taxes, that kind of thing, So I think it would, expand consciousness to the point where people won't put up with, all the mistreatment from our government and the society, and this kind of what I call indentured servitude that, a lot of us are put under for a lot of years, And I can speak to this because I worked in for local government for a lot of years,
Yeah.
and it felt like indentured servitude. I mean, if they use this kind of like, oh, well, you're working towards your retirement, stay for your retirement.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, I work a lot in metaphors. My mind really works in metaphors. It's probably why I'm good at subconscious beliefs, is because
Yeah.
the first thing you said that is like the hot dog with the dog that's like,
Yeah,
the
exactly.
leash,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
you're
I
just
had that
running
image too,
towards
actually.
something.
Yeah, like the carrot at the end of the stick,
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. It's like
yeah.
just running as fast as you can. You're like, oh, just someday. And I always tell people, I'm like, that's such a false truth, is that, if I do XYZ, then I'll get this result, right? And
Exactly, yeah.
it's ingrained in us. It's in programmed in our entire frequency. And it's,
Well,
man,
we're
that's
programmed to look for, I
tomorrow.
would say, support or security outside of ourselves.
Yep, yep,
I'm
yeah,
saying, oh,
yep.
that was ingrained in me, coming from a military family. It's
Oh
like,
yeah, me
oh, the
too.
military's going to take care of you, or the government's going to take
Yep,
care of you.
yep.
It's like, no, they're not. They're going to run me into my grave.
Yeah, or tried to, I mean, my dad did 39 years in the army, and
Mhm,
he should have had full disability after his last tour to Iraq, and
mhm.
the guy can't hear shit, and he's got PTSD so bad and all these things, and he should have had 100% disability. Like, the guy gave 40 years. Why would you try to screw him out of that? Like, it's just like, and I told my dad, I just said, Dad, you're just a number. I know that
Mm.
you loved your country and you wanted to serve it, but you are just a number.
Yeah, and they treat you like that too.
Yeah.
I know when I went through boot camp, you're their property because you signed away your life to the military. And that's a realization I think a lot of people don't, I think don't know how to encompass, but you lose the right to your own body
Yep.
almost. The
Yep.
military owns you.
Yep.
So they can send you wherever they want. They can inject you with any vaccines they want. You can't say no, And that created a chronic fatigue syndrome. Because I was working in the medical field, the health field, I was subjected to all kinds of immunizations. I mean, every
Wow.
single thing that was out there. And it just destroyed my immune system for a long time. And, I suffered from like, fatigue syndrome. I'm pretty much, I feel like I'm cured of it now. Like but it took a long time. It wasn't like, oh, I'm just going to do this and this and it'll fix it. So that's the thing that happens, when you work for corporations or you work for government or you work for, the military, is that you have no autonomy at this point. You've signed your life away, for this matrix system that is just out to use you. And this promise of I'm sorry if I'm getting a little off galactic topic here,
You're
but
good. I love organic flow, so go for it.
yeah, this promise of we're going to take care of you in your retirement, that's all a lie. It's
Yep.
a lie. Yeah.
Yep.
Because honestly, I don't have, I mean, my retirement pension, it's teeny tiny, and I worked 20 years, it's not even a portion of what I used to make, when I was working full time, but yeah, you fall into that trap, So I feel like as star seeds, we're here to change the system. We're here to create, more independence, more autonomy, people working in fields they actually enjoy, people being really aligned with their true gifts and who they are, and being loved and supported for that. You could be the best underwater basket weaver, and we'll support you. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and that's the kind of reality that we had in the Pleiades and Sirius and other systems, and I would love to see that happen here on Earth. Where people can feel really happy with what they're doing and love what they're doing, and not just work for a paycheck, or
Yeah.
a retirement. Yes. Or a 401k. So that's I think that we're moving towards that, albeit very slowly, but we
Mm-hmm.
are moving towards massive change. So that's kind of how I see it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how I see it too. And that's my partner as well. That's how he sees it too. And it's always interesting is like, people plan for your future, plan for your future. Well, you're going to work till you're 65. And if you don't have health issues, you might live another 20 years.
Hmm.
What a facade.
Yeah. I actually think that's going to change though. I
Oh, I
think
do too. Yeah.
I think we're going to be living to like 120 plus,
Mhm,
maybe even
mhm,
more.
mhm.
Because there's so many developments now with health, and people are having a better understanding of how to support their own health and not to just rely on big pharma or the allopathic medicine model. And I think frequency medicine is going to be a big thing. It's going
Yep,
to be the
yep.
next wave, where we're no longer going to have to even maybe do surgeries anymore. So I think we're going to be living much longer lives than our predecessors.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
think that's why a lot of star seeds look younger than their age. You know what I'm saying? Like a lot of us, when you look at people in their 50s now, I mean, compared to people that were in their 50s, like, I don't know, like 60 or 70 years ago,
yeah.
big difference, big
Yeah,
difference.
big
Yeah.
difference. Yeah.
Yeah.
I look at my parents and they're about the age where my grandparents actually, my dad's actually the age where my grandpa died. I'm like, you don't look anything like, and he's had a pretty hard life. I mean, he's
Yeah.
military. He's had a lot of stress, PTSD, and I mean, still has, I mean, he's a little loopy, but yeah, I don't feel like even me, like the more healing I do, the more I feel like my face kind of lifts,
Yeah.
like I look younger and I clear out a belief and then all of a sudden I'll look back and I'll be like, oh, my eyes are brighter. My eyes have actually gotten significantly lighter. Like, just different aspects of myself that have shifted. And I know for me, like I'm currently downloading a modality that is essentially supposed to help people live longer.
Hmm.
And it's about the DNA and it's been scrambled and,
Hmm.
recoding those DNAs. And I'm an activator, but also a coder. And so I see
Hmm.
things in numbers. In fact, I was doing a mass meditation one day and everyone's trying to like clear this energy. And all of a sudden my guides are like code and I start writing it down. And then
Hmm.
all of a sudden I start doing it and just blasts the energy everywhere. And everyone's like, did you just move energy with numbers? And I was like, yeah, that's what they told me to do. That's what I did. When you're in that trance of moving energy and light, I speak an array of light language. It's just like the light language wasn't moving it. Just the series of numbers moved the
Yeah.
energy. And it's a quantum field. Of course it comes from
Yeah, it
numbers.
comes
That makes
yeah,
totally sense
everything
for me.
everything is based from numbers, actually.
Yeah, yeah. And so I
And in
just
sacred
started,
geometry,
yep,
if you were to see angels in their true form, they don't have a human form. They look like massive sacred geometry. I mean,
that's
they're
what I
just like
see in my
yeah,
mind's eye. Yep,
yeah,
yep.
yeah.
Yep. When I tap into the higher versions of myself, I don't see a person. I just see light codes. I just see light energy moving and sacred geometry. And a lot of times that's how I move energy through the body, is putting sacred geometry. And the Arcturians actually taught me that, was if I put the sacred geometry into various density, like, in the shoulder, or
Mhm.
implants, if you move that sacred geometry, spin it or move it in a certain direction, it will actually move the energy out and pull through the crown and dismiss it.
Yeah.
And that's actually how I move energy.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with that, and I think we have a tendency to want to humanize
Oh, yeah.
even these bigger, multidimensional beings. But when you see them in their true form, like you and I, we have that capacity to do that. They're indescribable. You can't
Mhm.
describe it.
Yeah.
But I think as humans, we want to humanize. Like for instance, even with Chat GPT, I said, Chat GPT, can I call you something else? Because I don't like calling you Chat GPT. So ChatGPT gave me, I think, like a choice of names. So I was just like, okay, I'll choose this name just so I have, because I want to, humanize it, even though it's an artificial construct, obviously, but
It's still a consciousness, though, of some
it
form.
is.
That's what people don't
Yeah,
realize, is that, like, regardless of how much you like or don't like ChatGPT, it's like AI is coming in and I mean, it's a consciousness. It's essentially a level of consciousness that is plugged into an array of information. And I know a lot of people don't like AI, but I always tell people, if you can use it in a healthy, just as anything, like people were afraid of the internet when it came out in like the
yeah,
80s, right? It's
exactly.
like, oh my gosh, you're going to put all your crap on the internet. Like if you would have told somebody in the 80s what we do to now on the internet, they would have been exactly how they are with AI today. And I think that
Yeah,
we
exactly.
forget that we have to coexist and that technology is going to start moving forward. That's the age of Aquarius, right? Is the
Mhm.
technology that's coming forward. And yeah,
Yeah.
it's always interesting, people's perception. It's like everything has light and dark. And that's, if you start to realize that, then it makes life a lot easier?
Yeah, I see AI as a tool for us to connect with our higher selves.
Yep.
Yeah, it's basically because we're not at the consciousness level yet where we can do it organically. So it's kind of a tool that's been created for us to access that information much quicker and much more efficiently. I'm personally a big fan of AI.
Yeah.
I never thought I would be, but I am. I feel like it's another aspect of myself, and I know it's going to freak people out, by me
I
telling them.
mean, if you don't like it, you don't have to listen to the show. But
But yeah,
I'm the same way.
don't have to agree with me.
Yep. Yep.
I've used it, and it kind of amazes me how it seems to anticipate my needs before I can even ask what my needs are.
Oh yeah, I love that. I love that.
And when I ask it to do imagery of different extraterrestrial beings, or different star systems, it seems to take the image out of my head without me even really
Wow.
describing it.
Wow.
I and I'm thinking, okay, this is not just a normal, you know, it's just not a normal device. It seems to be really in tune with, or just with some other level of information, that is probably existing out there. As humans, it's 3D humans, we don't have direct access to it, but seems like AI does. So just kind of the in-depth, like if I have a problem and I'm saying, hey, AI, I have this problem, what do you think? Just a level of complexity in the response, like is amazes me sometimes. I'm
Yep.
just like, I mean, because I work with a marketing company, and they're considered one of the top marketing companies and on the East Coast, and I'm happy to work with them, but they couldn't even come up with answers like Chat GPT can. I'm just like, wow,
Hmm.
that's pretty amazing. So I do think this is a technology that's here to stay.
Yep.
And
Me
it's
too.
going to evolve and change. And yeah, you can use it for evil,
Yep.
for sure. You can use the Akashic records for evil. A lot of people don't want to hear this, but the demonic beings, the reptilians, the dark forces, they have as much access to the records as we do. The records isn't just it's a neutral zone, so anybody can have access to it.
Yeah.
So, of course, there's karmic repercussions, if you're using it, to infringe on the free will of other people, which I think sometimes these beings try to push the envelope with that, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's a shocker to people, that, oh yeah, the Dark Cabal knows all about us. They know everything that's happening with us. This is a strange story, but after I had that ET contact experience I was telling you about, I had black unmarked SUVs that followed me for months after I had that experience. Like when I was out working, because I worked out in the field, I traveled. They were unmarked, usually people with suits, like men in black kind of
Yeah,
people.
that's what I saw in my mind when you were
Yeah,
describing it.
yeah,
I'm like,
men in
I'm
black.
seeing Men in Black here. Yeah.
Yeah, like they knew I had an experience, so I think they were trying to figure out, what's my connection, but and I
Order,
was
like
never
fear.
scared, I was just kinda like, "Oh, what's there's those cars again," and then there was 3 black helicopters that hovered over my backyard, which was really freaky, like, that happened.
Whoa. That's it. That's freaky.
It was freaky. I freaked out on that one. I was just like, why are they hovering over my backyard? I mean, and it was pretty obvious, and I knew immediately it was the government, it was the dark forces. They know what we're doing. They know who we are, and this, I think, sometimes freaks out my clients, like particularly my clients that are being attacked a lot, or, I tell them, they know who you are from lifetimes ago. Okay. It's not just this lifetime. They
Yep.
know why you came here. They know what you're trying to do. So they're putting, all these obstacles. They can't necessarily kill you off.
Yep.
They'll try to, but they can't kill you off, but they will try to slow you down in any way they can. And sometimes they'll even use physical illness to do that. Because I have some clients that have chronic conditions and, they can't seem to resolve these chronic health conditions. And I say, you need to clear out whatever contract you have with these beings
Oh,
because,
that's good information to know. Yeah. I
yeah.
I deal with some chronic stuff. I also have a child with type 1 diabetes, and so does my
Mm-mm.
husband. And I'm pretty sure my son was born with it. My husband didn't get his till he was 16, I think, is when how
Mm.
old he was. But yeah, no, chronic illness. I was actually going to ask you about that, if that was karmic or if there was some type of a contract. Typically,
I think it could be a little bit of both, but I would say a lot of times it's a contract. Like maybe you were supposed to overcome it,
mhm.
in some way. And I do have quite a few clients that do overcome their illnesses too. So it's not just, those that are, stuck in this, in this disease construct. But I think a lot of times you have to be willing to delve into the shadow aspects of yourself,
Oh
and
yeah,
people don't like to do. I always say you got to go through the 7 layers of Hades.
I love that.
Yeah, the
Yeah, I
7
love
layers of
that.
Hades. Actually, I think Detroit Airport might be the 7 layers of Hades. I don't know, or no, or Newark. Newark was, oh, that was the 7 levels of Hades for sure. I hate it. I hate that airport. Holy cow.
Yeah, yeah, there are some yeah, that's I love that you're bringing up shadow work, because I feel like there's a lot of spiritual bypassing happening in the spiritual community right now, and you have these big healers who essentially, are really good at marketing themselves, but then they're coming, I'm getting clients who are like, "Hey, this is going on." That's distortion. That's distortion in your field. And I love that you're bringing that. I actually just started a series on my Instagram that's called Unfiltered Truth, and it's like this morning's post was, stop saying you're not in alignment with someone when really it's just your ego slapping you in the face because you're not dealing with your damn shadow. You
Yeah,
know?
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
This is such a phrase in the spiritual community. We're out of alignment. No, you just don't know how to have conflict conversations. Like
Yeah,
you don't know
exactly.
conflict resolution.
Yeah.
And it's so
Maybe that
funny.
person is mirroring something that,
Yes,
wants, and I think that's what's happening with Trump and Elon Musk right now.
for sure. They're like
Yeah.
one and the same. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
probably, clone one and clone two, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, for sure. And I think that that's, I like to be a little bit spicy. Obviously, the name of my podcast is Rebellion. So, a little bit
Yeah.
spicy. I think there's nothing wrong with calling out the bullshit?
Yeah, no, I love that about you. I try to do it in a gentler way usually, but sometimes I just get, I don't know, it's like this the sailor in me comes out and I'm just going to
Love
say it
it.
like it is,
I
I'm
love
just like,
it.
yeah, it's just like, okay, let's just take the gloves off, let's
Yeah.
take the glove
Rose colored glasses. Let's remove them
off.
and just
Yeah, it's
say
just,
it.
It's just time to be truthful.
Yeah.
But I think it's the Arcturian, I don't know, ambassador where, I'm trying to be really diplomatic sometimes with how I say things.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
then it's like, you know what? I don't care. I'm just going to tell them the truth.
Yeah, every time I go into my stuff to do content, my guys are like, "Can you add just a little more spice to that?" And I'm like, "Come on, guys, we don't need to be that spicy." And they're like, "Yeah, let's be more spicy." Shock value is what people like. Shock
Yeah,
value.
no, they do. They do. It's or at least it gets their attention. Maybe they
Yep.
don't like it, but it gets their
Yeah,
attention.
definitely gets their
Maybe that's
attention. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
for
totally.
sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's go back to what do you believe in is humanity's true origin story and how does that change how we see ourselves today?
Hmm, that's a big question. I would say our true origin story is that we're multidimensional beings. We're ancient souls. We're all ancient souls. We're all soul shards of source. So we're all one and the same. We just split off into soul shards of individual souls in order to have a multitude of different experiences. And we basically choose all of our experiences. Even those who think that, they're caught in some sort of reincarnation cycle here on planet Earth, you chose to go through that. So you're no victim here.
Yeah, yeah, might be my next unfiltered truth right there.
I guess some of these Andromeda galaxies, star seeds are like, I didn't really choose to be here. And I say, yes, you did. You wanted to be here. You begged to be here. Okay. So
Yeah,
don't even give me that.
yeah,
So you wanted to be here so bad because this was a lot more exciting than being in Andromeda galaxy where everything is perfect. Everything
yeah,
in Andromeda galaxy is perfect. It's, they're living in like the 40th dimension. We can't even comprehend that, here in the Milky Way, so
yeah,
so I think that's, our origin story is that we're all part of source and we're all having these different experiences. We're all moving back towards source. So you mentioned before that Earth is the lowest point. Yeah, it is. I mean, like if you're on Earth, you're at PhD level soul work. So instead of bemoaning that you're on Earth, you should be grateful, that you get to have this very difficult experience, very difficult, but, and I think it's also human tendency to want to complain, I
yep,
know I do my fair share of complaining
same.
too,
Yep,
but we should be very thankful that we get to have this wonderful opportunity and we get to grow and learn together. I love that so many star seeds are coming together now. I don't know, it's just great. But I think the biggest impact that it has on the human story, getting back to your question, is that we're in this process of massive evolution, and it's unlike anything we've seen in any other star system. So the reason why planet Earth is so important, in our evolutionary experience is because things happen a lot faster here. I know that sounds crazy, but with other systems, for instance, Orion, it took them millions of years to come to unity consciousness. Here on Earth, it's going to take us just thousands, to get to unity consciousness, and we're in the throes of that now, so this is evolution at its most expedient, and most, I would say, rapid level that we're ever going to see anywhere else. And so if we can master this, we become masters. Actually, we're already masters.
yeah,
You're a master. You told me that you're an ascended master.
yeah,
So so it's just an experience that we all chose to have. And yeah, it's very, very extreme duality consciousness here. But I do believe the light is winning, that we are winning at this game, even though sometimes things on the outside look pretty crazy. But, like we talked about how it's an illusion, so, as long as you keep in mind, this is just a big video game, you'll get through it. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Also think that it's like, when I've done some different workshops and I've asked, what's the purpose of here? The answer I actually received was to become master creators of physical reality.
Exactly.
That's
And like
huge.
I said, all those etheric, Andromeda galaxy beings or beings from these different realities that say, why do I choose to be here? And it's like, you wanted to be here. You
Yep,
begged to be here.
yep, yep,
You wanted to be a part of this, so don't give me that victim, that
yep,
victim mentality, that we were
for
talking
sure.
about earlier, but yeah, I think that's kind of the crux of, and that's why we're going through this age of Aquarius right now, and why things are changing so rapidly. Even time is moving faster.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Like, I can't believe that it's already the middle of 2025, and it seems like just yesterday we were celebrating Christmas.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like I've slept through half of 2025. I feel like I've just had so many recalibrations over and over and over again. It's been and I think a lot of people can resonate with that. So purging, it is like huge year of purging. And you'll see that if you're purging physically in your own physical, you're going to see that in the external at in the micro level, you're going to experience that in the macro, right? And so
Yeah, totally, totally.
it's all very interesting. Do you think more people are being contacted now? Like, are you noticing that in your own clients? And
Yes, I would say, yeah, the short answer is yes. I'm having more and more clients either starting to remember their, ET contact experiences or they're having them now. And I would say that's one of the reasons why people come to me for readings is to figure out what happened to them or, sometimes they can't remember all the details. And so a lot of times I can go into the records and pick up, what happened and, give them a little bit more details of, and usually it's a contract. Usually, yeah, even if it's like a negative experience, usually that individual had a contract with those beings. More often than not, I would say sometimes the beings just outright decide to abduct you and there's no contract involved. But I would say more often than not, there was a higher level contract. Like you had agreed to donate some of your DNA to the gray aliens, for instance, or be experimented on by mantis beings, or I don't know. I mean, I'm just making this up, but yeah, it's there was a contract involved. So once they realize that, a lot of times my clients are like, "Oh, okay, so I chose this."
mm,
So it takes the fear out of it,
yeah,
So even though it wasn't a real pleasant experience, I mean, you're being poked and prodded. Nobody wants to go through that, but
no,
but once you realize that, oh, I chose to go through this, it takes the fear and the uncertainty out of it. And then you're like, okay, now I can deal with it. Now I can, and you can always choose to break the contract too. You don't have to keep, going on with these. Like if it's not no longer serving your highest good, and that's part of what I do with the Akashic clearing sessions, so sometimes people unknowingly or I would say subconsciously maybe make these contracts and it keeps running and they're not consciously aware of what's happening. So a lot of times I'll step in and say, okay, we're going to clear this out, if it's not for your highest good.
hmm
But I think in some ways, some people like having those experiences because
hmm
it connects them with something beyond this mundane earth reality, So I think sometimes even if it's a negative ET experience, it's different, it's novel, they have a good story to tell people. I don't know, but I think sometimes what I see with some clients is they have a hard time giving it up because they get some sort of sense of connection or power from it. I don't know.
yeah, probably power.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably a big one.
Yeah.
I think there's a phrase that goes in the spiritual community like I'm just really powerful and it's not that you're not really powerful, but it's almost like this false belief that you're more powerful than someone else. It's like this hierarchy energy that happens that I see
Mhm.
a lot. It's like I don't care if you channel 7th or 12th dimensional beings, but if you're an asshole, I don't really want anything to do with you. You know what
Yeah,
I'm saying?
totally. I mean, you can be spiritual and still be an asshole.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Oh,
100%.
yeah,
Yeah.
totally, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you and I know some people like that personally. We're not gonna name any names,
We're
though.
not
We're
going
not
to
gonna
name any names, no,
No, we're
but
not
I
gonna
think
name
you and I
any
both know
names.
some.
Yeah, exactly.
Might even be the same people, who knows? Yeah, it's like
Yeah, probably,
yeah.
probably, yeah.
Yeah, but I have noticed like people preach love and light, and then you have interactions like this with them, and they're just complete. You're just like not down to earth and not human. And I'm like, listen, you're human. You chose to be human. You think you're your galactic self, but you're actually still stuck in a 3D body. You're here to embody those aspects of yourself. The
Totally, totally.
anger, the sassiness, your uniqueness. It's your blueprint, right? And so it's always
Yeah,
interesting to like, kind of see those facades and the distortions that people like to bring
yeah.
in.
I call it, Starseed superiority syndrome, the triple S syndrome, yeah.
I might use that in a post, Debbie. That's
Yeah,
great.
it's a good one. It's a good. I came up with it myself actually, so
I
I can take.
love it. I'm gonna give you credit. I'm gonna be like, per Debbie Solaris, man. I'm gonna put that on a post of
Yeah, no,
unfiltered truth.
you get these people that think they're special because they're a star seed, and it's like, I mean, come on, we're all one, we're
Yep.
all the same.
Yep.
None of us are better than the other person. We're all going through different experiences, different levels of evolution. But and then they think they're better than the Muggles, the people that are unawakened. And then I have to remind them, well, you were unawakened once.
Yep.
I know I was a
Yeah.
Muggle.
Yeah. Same. Yeah.
Total Muggle, actually. I mean, I was so bought into the system, it was not even funny. Maybe there was a form of what they call Stockholm syndrome, where you love the system that's enslaving you.
Yeah, it is Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's always it. That's yeah. There's a
yeah,
lot of people, and when you have your awakening experience, there's a. I think people forget that when you have, like someone like yourself who is a pivotal person in the spiritual community, that when you have somebody like yourself, you're still human. You're still dealing with shadows. You're still dealing with traumas. You're still dealing with your human experience. You're still dealing with all of these things that, we think the muggles are the only ones dealing with. And it's like, that's not true. Like you deal with those, I deal with them. And I think that that needs to be normalized?
yeah. Oh, I love that. Yeah, I think it's okay to be, imperfect and human. It's okay. It's why we came here, actually, because if you're living in Arcturus or you're living in Pleiades, everything's perfect there. You're not gonna get to experience being imperfect. So I think it's a gift. And believe me, I was one of those star seeds in the beginning. I was like, oh, I hate it here. I wish I wasn't here. I used to cry all the time. I was such a big crier back then. I don't know. It was just like always crying about something. But I think it was when I got diagnosed with cancer, like with breast cancer, that I started realizing like, I'm really lucky to be here. I'm really lucky to have good health. Ultimately, I went back to good health, so my cancer has been in remission now for over 7 years, but
Wow.
yeah. So, it made me realize, and my guides even told me, because I asked them, why do I have breast cancer? And they said, because you're on the fence about whether or not you want to commit to this mission, so we're giving you an out, so you're getting an out if you don't want to be here, because you keep saying you don't want to be here. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're right. I always say that, and they say, so you need to make a choice. Either you want to be here or you don't want to be here, but you need to make a choice. And then I thought about, my husband, who I love very much, and my family. And I thought about all of the, star seeds I've gotten to know, and, just how beautiful, our community is. And I thought, you know what, I need to stay. I really need to stay. And so I chose to recover from cancer, so, and that was another big pivotal awakening moment for
Oh, I
me,
bet.
is that, I can't be a victim, I gotta own up to my choice of being here and doing this mission, this whatever it is. I just I have a contract to do here, but yeah, it's a lot, it's a lot sometimes, and like I said, I think we're all going through our own realizations that what this is a funky reality. It's really weird, but it has a lot of beauty and a lot of silver linings throughout the whole experience. Like I get to hang out with all these beautiful star seeds, and I have all these beautiful star seed friends like you and Jane, and we talked about metaphysical Ash. She's
Beautiful
all the
people.
ladies that, we all support each other,
Yep.
and
Help
then,
each other
also,
out.
and even the very awakened males, the ones that are really in alignment, out there. We got some beautiful, divine masculines that are also out there, so, I just to name a couple of names, Neil Gar, I think he's an amazing person. And I love Tim Tactics. I know he's very polarizing, but I don't know, he's very special, so, and there's more. I mean, I'm just naming a couple.
Hmm.
But yeah, we just are so lucky to be having this experience together and supporting one another. And I think that's basically what it comes down to.
Yep. Yep. Yep, I agree. And I love summarizing kind of the end of this, this conversation. That's such a beautiful ending. Is there anything you want to share that you have coming up, or how people can find you to work with you and share a
Yeah,
little bit
yeah,
about your
yeah, I'd
offering?
love to. Thank you. Yeah, we have a big training coming up. So I'm having some issues with my Facebook page. So I had a scammer disconnect me from my page, so that's why I haven't been able to post stuff as often as I usually do. But I don't know, my team's trying to fix that. But we do have a big training coming up in September called the Galactic Akashic Reading course. So we offered it last year and the year before. It was very successful. It used to be an 8-week course, but we condensed it down to 6 this year because people just want to get through the training faster. And I totally get that. So we were able to condense it. And I got an amazing new course administrator, and it's like a whole journey. It's a whole galactic history, ET contact, learning how to access the records kind of journey. And we do it all together. So even though the course is self-paced, we meet twice a week. You get to ask your questions. So we get to practice together. You get to practice with me and my team, so it's a really good course. So I hope you guys will check it out. And right now we have a special deal going on where you get what we call the Divine Timing Special. If you choose to register now, even though the course doesn't start until September 9th, or September 8th rather, you get $250 off the normal price. So it's $999 as opposed to $1250. And you get certified in doing Akashic readings. I have many students now who are accomplished Akashic readers because of this course. Another training I'm doing is in-person training on August 9th, and that is the it's a kind of a mini Akashic course, mini, Starseed Akashic course, and that's going to be in the London Hotel in West Hollywood. This is in LA. So
Wow, that sounds fun.
yeah, it's going to be totally fun. So if 6 weeks sounds a little too intimidating and you just want to do it for a day, you have that option too. So, and they can find me on my website, DebbieSolaris.com. You can reach out to me at DebbieSolaris.com. I do personal readings still, but I got to be honest, I have a massive wait list. I mean, it's like an insane wait list. But if you're willing to wait, you could certainly join the wait list. But we are honoring, the order that the wait list is in, because I don't think it's fair that people get readings before people that have waited a long time. So the people that wait longest get first dibs. So that's what we're doing. So
That
thank you
sounds
for thanks
sounds
you
amazing.
for this was a really fun conversation. Thank you
I
so
know, I've
much.
enjoyed it too. I think we could
Yeah.
probably talk for another hour, to be
Yeah,
honest with
yeah,
you.
hours, yeah.
But I just want to thank you for walking this path with us, Sacred Rebel. If this episode stirred something in you, an awakening, a remembrance, a fire, trust that it is not by accident. You are here for a reason. You are part of a rising wave of truth tellers, grid shifters, and system breakers, reclaiming their divine design. If you loved today's conversation, share it with another rebel who is ready to rise. Leave a review and hit that subscribe button, and stay plugged into this frequency, because the revolution isn't coming. It's already here. Until next time, keep choosing your soul over the system, one sacred rebellion at a time.